Well, hi and welcome everybody to the 22nd edition of the SALT Lunchbox. We welcome you on Zoom and also on Facebook Live. And most of you know, my name's Dave. I'm the founder of SALT, Sport and Life Training. We're a not-for-profit health education organisation. And we typically work in sporting clubs, and we're getting back into them. We're getting back into some businesses too with our Club Reconnect program. But we've had a strong focus over this pandemic time on this lunchbox, where our desire is to inspire and connect. And today, I'm telling you, is going to be very, very informative. We're going to be talking about sleep, and Edwina has put a tremendous amount of research and work into coming up with some information that is different to what you typically hear and read in the mainstream media. We'd love for you to get involved through the chat, through the Q&A icons at the bottom of your screen, where you should mark it for all attendees to read, and where James will crack jokes, talk about football, carry on, and occasionally answer questions. We'd like to thank Eastland, Bendigo Bank, and FC Business Solutions for your generosity. You make this webinar possible. So I'm going to welcome in Lane, and I'm going to welcome in Edwina. Again, these are our go-tos for all. Lane sounds like he's getting out of the bushes.
Hello, Dave. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent news. The technology's working.
Yes. We had a Club Reconnect session last night, and a lot of guys were they found it to sleep. We had a heat map where they had to fill out the things that were the biggest issues for them, and stress and anxiety and sleep were the biggest issues. Some were saying that they've lost all of their routine, that because they're not going to bed at a normal time, they're staying up, they're watching TV till all hours, and then they're not getting out of bed till some late time, and they're finding that during the night they're actually sleeping really poorly. I think sleep is this strange and changing dimension in our lives. When I was young, I used to be able to pull all-nighters every now and then. Now I'm lucky if I can stay awake for an all-dayer.
That's funny.
We're really privileged to have Ed with us today, and I really mean this. She's not going to present just anything. She's done some terrific research, and she's looked at science and the benefits of how we can improve sleep and even the length of time. Ed is a psychology, maths, and wellbeing teacher. She's seen the impacts that sleep deprivation has had on her students. I used to see that in students as well. She's had her own issues in regard to sleep, and through a personal and professional quest for understanding sleep and its benefits, she has some insights to share with us today. So this is not just head knowledge, this is life experience. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks, Dave. Look, my goal today is to tell you a little bit of my own personal journey, to sort of have a look at a bit of neuroscience, not too much science, but I think it's worth knowing and understanding, and hopefully to inspire everyone to rethink some of your own beliefs and behaviours towards your own sleep. And I'm hoping that after today, you'll be able to experience the benefits of greater productivity and overall life satisfaction. So I'm also hoping that you'll find something that you can pass on to someone else who may also be struggling with sleep. And I think it is a common conversation, Dave, whether it's in a sporting club or any sort of organisation, there are always large numbers of people that struggle. So today, for our audience, I'd love you to be thinking and sharing in our chat why you think that sleep deprivation is an epidemic, and hopefully we can cover some of those things as we go along. So first of all, my own journey. I've always been a bit of a time squeezer, working full time, trying to be parent of the year. When the workday ended, running between netball, training, coaching, and the many other pursuits of 3 very active daughters. Sleep was a necessity, but wasn't always a priority for me. And that was my attitude and belief. It was like these laws of nature where sleep benefits us doesn't really apply to me. How wrong could I be? About 11 years ago, I was really feeling the effects of sleep deprivation, tiredness all day. I'd sit on the couch. I'd only be on the couch for 5 minutes. I'd fall asleep. feeling very tired in the middle of the day, and even when driving, stop at traffic lights was enough time for me to fall asleep and then sort of say to the girls, wake me up when the lights turn green. Not okay. And certainly long distance driving was not something that I could do. What I also noticed was that I was having some funny symptoms as well. I was getting night sweats. I was waking up, having to go to the toilet. And I thought, well, perhaps it's just hormonal, something part of, you know, being a woman in that age. But took to Dr. Google. And whilst I waded through a few really, you know, diseases that I was really quite concerned about, I stumbled across sleep apnea. And what I realized was that's what I had. So wasn't really keen on going to hospital to get a test. So found that you could get tested, had a sleep test, and found that what was actually happening is I was stopping breathing for sometimes up to 90 seconds. And my body was thinking, or my brain was thinking, it wasn't getting enough oxygen, so I was dying. So generated all this adrenaline, and that was causing all of these symptoms. So it was really, when it happens to you, you just think, oh, well, this is normal, but it's not. And I was able to get the test. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, got a CPAP machine, which is like a little mini respirator. And whilst a bit tricky to navigate at the beginning, found that having a good night's sleep, I woke up and after the first night felt the benefits of that. Took the stress off my system. So since then, I guess I reflect back, and probably 5 years, it was 5 years that I probably had sleep deprivation. And I'd like to say I'd learnt my lesson, but I guess I was someone who was accustomed to sleep deprivation. So I really have to work at getting 6 hours sleep, 8 hours sleep, because I do tend to time squeeze. And I would say that I'm a work in progress, and it really is. And coming back to Larissa's work on self-care, that is part of my self-care that I need to really reflect on. Now, Lane, I thought you had a really interesting story when we talked earlier about someone with a similar sleep issue. Would you like to share it now?
Yeah, the story is about a guy called Rhett, a really good mate of mine, you know, perfectly normal kind of project manager, tradie builder, used to getting up early in the morning, would generally be in bed at 10:30 at night, so pretty good sleep patterns. But he started to struggle with his sleep, and he went for, it got so bad that he would get, he'd be feeling anxious by the time mid-afternoon came around about what was going to happen that night. And by the time he got to bed, his brain was just firing off, and his adrenaline was pumping, his emotions were heightened, and he literally couldn't sleep. He went for 2 weeks with next to no sleep. And by the time he got to the end of 2 weeks, this guy who was just a normal, everyday, fully functioning, stable guy was an absolute wreck and having some seriously troubling thoughts about whether or not he wanted to stay alive or not. So sleep deprivation, not only is it, you know, something that can have a mild impact, it can have really, really significant long-term dangerous ramifications for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, scientists don't yet fully understand exactly why we need sleep, funnily enough, even though we spend a third of our lives doing it. But they do know that there are huge physical and psychological benefits that come when we do have a good night's sleep. And in adults, that is 8 hours. Yep, a third of our day. For teenagers, a little bit more at 9.5. And for primary age children and below, it's 10 hours. And obviously with babies, they sleep most of the day. I always think a baby's life's a great one. And yet despite this, more than 40% of adults don't get a good night's sleep consistently. And in our schools, the data's a lot worse than that. It's 60%, but I would say it's probably more than that. When I've done random sleep sort of surveys with my kids, I'm sometimes horrified when they add it up over a whole week what their sleep debt is. It's just incredible. And it's costing businesses billions of dollars in lost productivity. People show up to work, but they're not productive. And it's the same impact on learning in schools. Students show up, but unable to learn. And so we're not getting the academic, or it doesn't matter how good the teaching is. It doesn't matter, you know, what's happening in the classroom if students can't maintain attention. So our sleep scientists are calling it a global epidemic of our time, but one that's not properly understood or valued enough for people to take its impacts seriously.
Ed, do we tend to look at sleep as a cognitive thing? So sleep impairments kind of are, well, I'm a bit tired during the day, but it's much more than that, isn't it? It's like a physical...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the cognitive piece, I guess, because it's affecting our thinking and that then triggers behaviours. So the cognitive is really important because that's where, I guess, you know, the main centre of our brain. But then the physical things that come with that and the degeneration, and I'll go into some of the effects of sleep deprivation if we don't have that restoration. So that comes next. So Dave, would you mind popping slide 1 up for us, please?
Sure.
Just to a little bit of brain science to explain a little bit about what happens during sleep. So whilst a lot of our functions slow down or shut down during the night, that's not the case with our brains. They are incredibly active, and hence why we need to have our 8 hours sleep, because our brains need that time. So what you see here are 4 lots of waves. The awake waves, these are brain waves that when we put electrodes on our heads when we're sleeping, this is what we can see, and we can tell when people are in different stages of sleep. So this is how our sleep laboratories are able to test whether we are having a good night's sleep or not. But just to look at these waves and their function. So the awake waves, the beta waves, are they're the waves that we exhibit when we're awake. The light sleep ones, you can see that they're a little bit more defined. They initiate your sleep cycle and act as that transition down into deeper stages. So deeper sleep stages, which are the really, really important ones. During this light stage, your muscles relax, your heart rate and breathing slow down, and you wake up quite easily. So you may have experienced being on the couch. Everyone can maybe hear you snoring and think that you're asleep. Wake you up and you go, oh, I wasn't asleep. I could still hear what was going on. So that's that light stage. But what we really need are these, we need these other 2 stages. So the deep sleep, where you see these big brain waves, focus on our bodies. And it's the most rejuvenating and restorative sleep stage. So what we have here is muscle growth and muscle repair. And this wonderful process where cerebral fluid washes through our brain and gets rid of all the toxins. So normally, you know, we've got this incredible blood supply and oxygen, obviously, to work all of the functioning in our brains. And we've got to get rid of the wastes. And that's what this cerebral fluid does. And it's these little toxins called beta amyloids, and they get washed away during this deep stage. And if we don't get it, that they can't get washed away and they build up. And we don't want that. And what we see in elderly people, particularly with mental impairment around memory, like Alzheimer's disease, we find that they have built up of these similar things. So we really do need to take this seriously and see that this washing and cleaning process has to happen if we're going to wake up feeling okay. And then we've got the REM sleep, and that's the rapid eye movement. It's when we dream. It's sometimes called paradoxical sleep because our bodies can be a little paralyzed or are paralyzed, so we don't act out our dreams. But this is the important stage for memory consolidation. So if we've had a big day learning, then we need to make sure that those memories get put into long-term memory. And it's a bit like, you know, at the end of the day, we've got papers on our desk, we file them away, so when we get back tomorrow morning, we can find everything. And if we don't, they pile up, and that's a bit like what happens if we don't have this memory consolidation process. So, Lane, when you talk about this cognitive element, I guess that's this REM process and this organising and filing away the things that we learn and the memories, the things that we do, so that we can access them for later. So, Dave, on the second slide, we'll just go to this quickly. This is where there's cycles. You know, we should have 8 hours sleep, 7.5 to 8 hours sleep. So 5 cycles is really what we're looking for. And what we notice that in the first 2 cycles, each cycle is 90 minutes, we go into that deep sleep twice. So in that deep sleep, if we were awoken, it takes about 30 minutes to get there, we'll feel groggy. It's where sleepwalking happens. So if you've got children that sleepwalk, and you push them back to bed, they won't remember that because it's a really deep stage of sleep. And you can see that there's more REM sleep or dream sleep towards the end of the night, and those periods get longer. And that's why we wake up often dreaming, and you know, we can remember some of those dreams. So that's what's happening in the brain. So Dave, we can come off that now. And I'd like to now focus, I guess, that's sort of the science. We have to have the sleep if we want to be at our best problem solvers, and I think emotionally as well. And when Lane was talking about the sleep deprivation of Rhett, that he became a different person. Our whole personalities do change. And we know that tired and cranky is a common statement we make, that psychologically we're impacted as well. And the other thing about sleep deprivation is that if we have 4 hours sleep, so we've deprived or we've only had half the amount of sleep, we will the next day have the same impairments as if we were at the blood alcohol limit of not being able to drive, so 0.05 or above. And that's significant. Do we have measures for that when people get behind a wheel? No, we don't. But we have statistics that tell us there are lots of accidents that happen because people are sleep deprived. And what actually happens is people are driving. It's a monotonous activity. And it's monotonous activities that force the falling asleep into what we call micro sleeps. And it's enough to push us off the road or into oncoming traffic. It's just so unsafe. And there's lots of signs up on the road. We know that. And it's a terrible thing for everyone. And I think we all have to have that responsibility to say we won't drive if we are sleep deprived. The impacts on learning, we know that focus and attention, as I said, if students can't focus in class, they can't remember stuff. So it makes it really hard. I wonder, Lane, whether you might like to share the story of Tom Boyd and the impacts on his and his football.
Yeah, well, Tom. Everyone knows Tom was a star footballer. I think Dave's probably really more familiar with Tom Boyd from his Eastern Rangers days. But Tom Boyd was a star footballer. Played won a premiership with the Western Bulldogs. Kicked 3 goals in that grand final against my Swans. So I'll never forget that. But Tom Boyd's not playing football anymore, and he's recently come out with a clip where he talks about his battle with mental health. And he talks about one of the reasons why he battled so hard with mental health was insomnia. And he puts insomnia down to being the biggest thing that he had to confront, which was having the biggest impact on his capacity to do his job and to get enjoyment out of doing what it was that he was doing. And ultimately, he talks about going to the psychologist at the Western Bulldogs and saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't function anymore. And the main reason why I can't function is because I can't sleep. And I've got to find a way of dealing with that. But one of the things, Ed, you might be able to comment on here is the impact that sleep deprivation has on the amygdala, because it's the amygdala that really fires up when we can't sleep. And the amygdala is where we store all that emotional memory. And so when we start to try and sleep and we can't sleep, up comes all this ruminating thoughts and negativity and all these sorts of things that begin to emerge. And of course, that then becomes cyclical, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, when I think about why we're bad at managing our sleep, there's probably 3 things I'll suggest. There's so many different things, but there are 3 big ones. The first one, as you said, stress and anxiety can keep us from sleeping. We worry about stuff. We create all these stories of possibility that aren't true. We're creating them. And we just ruminate. We go over and over and over. So it is about re-scripting. We'll come to some of the solutions a bit later. But the second thing is we lead such busy lives and we feel the need to get lots of stuff done because that's what we have to do. And it's at the expense of our sleep. And so our sleep's simply not a priority. And we continue to squeeze. We go, well, where can we cut from? Well, a third of our day is sleeping. Yeah, we'll cut it from that because we have to get things done. We just have to. We have to. It becomes part of who we are. And we really do beat ourselves up if we don't get these things done. And we criticize ourselves. And that's where the self-compassion and self-care comes in, to realize, no, I need to have this time. And then the last thing is our addiction to gadgets and Netflix. Good Netflix series, I would have to say, Yep, I'm guilty of that. You put the Netflix series on, just one more episode, before you know it, it's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's what you were saying with Rhett, I think, Lane, that was a problem for him. And you know, even on our gadgets, on Facebook, the dopamine hit that we get or a text message we get that we're looking for, all of this is not helpful for getting to sleep. We know the blue screens stimulate the brain. We have something that is that we get called melatonin to help us get to sleep, and usually it comes to us 2 hours before we go to sleep. In teenagers, it's 2 hours later, so often that's why they want to go to bed late, get up later. But we've got to understand this biology of our bodies so that we can make sure that we're working with it to get the benefits. And often what happens is we get to this state of normal, of brain fog, thinking that that is the way life is. And I guess the challenge then is try and get a good night's sleep and see the difference and feel the difference. And so I guess now, hopefully people are thinking around some comments to bring in, but just to finish off, just to think around, I've got 3 things for us to ponder on. So 3 big things that I think we can do immediately to improve our sleep and ensure that we get sleep. So the first one is to develop better beliefs and attitudes that value sleep and its benefits, rather than wearing that badge of honor that says, hey, I can do that all night, or I don't need sleep, and look at me, how great, you know, I can still function.
Can I tell you a little story about that?
Yeah,
I read an article. In fact, it was an article it was either the Harvard Business Review, it was one of those Fortune magazine, about a guy in India who ran SAP India, and his name was Rajan Das. And Rajan was a young up-and-coming executive, about 35 years of age, CEO of SAP. You know, we're talking 60,000 employees, and this guy was a legend. And his main thing was that he only needed 4.5 hours sleep a night, right?
Yeah.
So he prided himself on his ability to function at a high level without sleep. Yeah. He had a heart attack in his late 30s and he died.
Yeah.
They did an autopsy on him. I don't want to get too gruesome about it. They did an autopsy on him. And when they looked at his heart, it was the equivalent of the heart of someone who'd been in a war zone, someone who had been impacted by incredible trauma by being involved in, you know, warfare activity. So the impact it had on his heart was just amazing. So he felt all right, but internally he was really struggling. So
yeah, I think our bodies compensate, Lane, and that's the thing. And so because we do compensate and we take it as our new normal, we don't do anything about it. So we have to be self-compassionate and realize that our bodies need sleep and the restorative benefits that it provides. So you deserve a good night's sleep every night. And so it's not just something that you reward yourself with when you can. The second one, I think this is a great one too, is a sleep recipe for yourself. Now, our kids are the best sleepers because we often have good routines for them. We say bath, PJs, clean your teeth, a story, a song, and then sleep. So a thing that goes over and over, and the bodies get used to it. They don't have devices and they sleep better. But as adults, we also need to look at our routines, and I'm sure not many of us would have anything near that of our kids. What could ours look like? Well, we could have no devices an hour before we intend to be asleep. We could instead develop different practices before sleep, things like meditation, reading off a book rather than a screen, a gratitude journal, and a cool room, because we know that to drop into this deep level of sleep, we do need a change in temperature. So what works for you is the question I have when you get your best night's sleep. Think about that and develop a recipe. And the third thing is to create good wake habits. Manage for maximum productivity. So are you a night or a morning person? Work that out. When and where do you do your best work? And do the mindless tasks when you're least productive. Be productive. You'll then be able to manage your sleep. When you manage your sleep, you'll be able to be more productive. So it's a great cycle. So there's the reality is there's no benefits to depriving ourselves of sleep and so many benefits for getting sleep. And it's a choice for us. So understandably, if there are medical issues, please seek advice. Make sure that you do get medical attention. And I guess as parents, please speak to your teenagers and ensure that they get sleep. A good night's sleep is as important as exercise and nutrition. And if they're worried about that, or they're really wanting to be healthy, then this is the third pillar. But I guess the most important thing is be a good role model, because they're going to look at what you do more than what you say. So I'll hand back to you, Dave. I know we haven't got much time, but maybe there are some questions or...
Yeah, there's a few things. I've enjoyed listening to you two while not being able to get a word in you know, I reckon the worst thing, if you're a bit of a workaholic and you love your job as I do, every email that comes through shows up on my phone, and I have my phone with me every waking minute. So I'm actually often reading an email 5 minutes before I get into bed, or getting out in the morning, and first thing I see are emails. And I reckon, not that I've actually done it, but one thing that would help a great deal is to not have emails appearing on the screen of your phone if you've got your phone with you all the time. I do want to welcome the question from Paul. Paul's a great friend, Paul Russo of SALT, and it's good to see you here, Paul. I haven't seen you here before. Any advice for those of us who regularly suffer sleep paralysis? They have to be brief, you've only got a minute, but I don't know what it is and how can you help it?
Yeah, sleep paralysis. Yep, it is a tricky one. And it's that being a little bit awake but being paralyzed. So it's this sort of halfway point. I think it's a medical thing. It's about having a chat to a doctor about that and explaining the symptoms, and then really thinking around the sleep recipe, you know, about thinking around where you're sleeping, you know, making sure the regular cycles and Dr. Google, yeah, Dr. Google. But I think for sleep paralysis, quite serious. I've had students, you know, it can be quite debilitating, and certainly not getting the quality sleep that you need for restoration. So it's certainly something to flag medically.
Yeah, well, we know Paul actually had a very serious head injury playing football, and he now campaigns to make sure, particularly in vets football, that guys play within the spirit of the game so as not to get damaging head injuries, and that's another topic altogether. I'm going to share the screen and just go over your 3 points really quickly and excite our audience about what's coming up. So develop beliefs and attitudes that value sleep and its benefits. Let's not be one of those people who wear a badge of honour. I work so hard that I can't sleep. Relearn how to go to bed. Develop a night routine that helps getting to sleep. And one of our writers in was talking about reading a book. And I think reading a book for many people is just very, very helpful. Create good wake habits. You'll then get to bed at the right time. So that's self-care, structuring our day, turning off our computer a few hours before going to sleep, really important. Tonight, this is your action point. Make it a priority to try and get 9 hours of sleep. That's ambitious. And share with family or friend one thing that could help them develop better sleep habits.
Yeah. I think important, Dave, is if we do have loved ones that, you know, maybe are chronic snorers or that they are showing signs of tiredness, don't wait before you address it with them, because there is something, there's stuff out there to help them, and it will improve the not only the quality but the length of their life. Yeah,
I think that's one of the great takeaway points from today. It's not just about feeling like you've had a good night, it's actually protecting your longevity, your health. Yeah. We've got Craig Abbott coming up on Monday, and look, I reckon most of us have struggled a little bit to get motivated to exercise now that gyms are closed and so on. If you get a chance to listen to Craig, he talks about exercising with purpose, meaning working out what you enjoy doing and what purpose you're trying to achieve. It's a whole reframing around exercise that I'm expecting is going to motivate me and you to do things that we're going to enjoy and do over a longer period of time. Thank you to our sponsors, as always, Bendigo Bank, Eastland and FC Business Solutions. I met a girl last night on the Reconnect session, and she said, I haven't listened to a single session live, but I've heard every one of them on catch up, and they've been really helpful. And I was just thrilled that people are listening on catch up. So you can get to the catch up on any of our sessions from our website, from our Facebook, or from YouTube. That's our Club Reconnect, and I've got to tell you, we tried breakout rooms last night where we said get into groups of 3. We pressed a button and suddenly everyone in the room was in a group of 3. And then I could go and visit like a ghost and listen to what they were saying and then pop back out and then close them down again and said, how did you go? And they said, that was great. And then we asked them another question, and in future what we'll say is go into your breakout rooms and talk about it, come back. Technology can be fantastic. So contact us if you're interested in a Club Reconnect session for your club, how to come back fitter, stronger, more capable of caring for your community. And we've got a whole lot of different ways of measuring information in that session. That's the number for Lifeline. We always put it up because some people might have a crisis. And so we want to thank you. Thank you, Ed. That was fantastic. Thanks, Wayne. Thanks to all of our listeners. We know you had to log in from an old email today because we accidentally told you it was on yesterday. But we do really appreciate you joining us. So let's get through this time together, fitter, happier, better, stronger, more prepared for a new world that comes after COVID, where we've used this time to become better and stronger people. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.